Views expressed by Camaplan podcast guests may not reflect those of Camaplan. Camaplan does not guarantee the accuracy of information provided by guests, nor does it endorse or recommend any individual or organization. Camaplan is not an investment advisor, CPA, realtor, or attorney. You are encouraged to conduct your own due diligence before making investment choices. For any tax, legal, accounting, investment, or other questions, please consult a specialist. Hi, I'm Michael Duncan, and welcome back to The Road to Financial Freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Camaplan, a self-directed IRA administrator focused on educating investors on how to grow retirement savings faster through alternative investments. In each episode, we're going to take an in-depth look at the many roads taken to financial freedom and how they differ for each of our guests. Our goal is to help the listeners learn how they can achieve their own financial freedom through the experience and stories of experts that have done just that. Today's guest focuses on the acquisition, development, and syndication of self-storage facilities nationwide. He currently owns and operates over 4 million square feet and 25,000 units nationwide. His education organization, selfstorageinvesting.com, provides courses, tools, live events, and mentoring to help others launch their own self-storage business to enjoy a lifestyle, as he has coined, free from tenants, toilets, and trash. I'm very excited to welcome Scott Meyers to the show. Scott, how are you doing today?
Hey, Michael, I'm doing fantastic. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. And I have to say, as I was kind of preparing for this episode and everything, I saw the thing that you coined and I was like, that in itself is a great slogan. It had me sold. I was ready to go. So I don't necessarily have the money to do that this second, but
well, we'll solve that in a minute.
Awesome. I love to hear that. That just means I'm going to be in a better place at the end of this 30-minute recording session. So why don't you take me from the beginning? How did you get into this industry? Where did you start?
I think like many people that, so since we're in commercial real estate now, most people start where it is most logical and easiest to get into real estate, and that is with a single family house. And so the first was the one that I lived in and took out a home equity loan on that to buy my first single family rental property. So this is going back maybe earlier than your recollection, Michael, but some of the folks will remember Mr. Carlton Sheets and the home study system that he put out way back in the late 80s. And that was how to, basically the Burr method before it became the Burr method, and, how to find and evaluate and purchase very creatively single family houses. And I was able to find the first 3 rental properties that I bought had assumable mortgages on them through the VA, the Veterans Administration. And so that made it really easy for me to slide in without having really to be able to qualify or have a balance sheet and experience into those loans, and then just use the private equity loan that I took out of my existing house to get into my first 3 rental properties. And so we rehabbed them, refinanced them, rented them out, and had about $200 a month in positive cash flow, and we were off to the races, I say. And when I say we, along the way, I met my beautiful bride-to-be, and we began doing the business together. And as we got married and further down the path, we recognized that this was really to be a hedge against that retirement. So I went through the .com or the .bomb crash and recession of 2000. And that's when I began to look really hard at having something else in terms of my retirement set up for me, because I was working for a corporation whose stock tanked. I was in the tech sector. And I recognized that, I was making more money per hour in real estate investing, even though I was doing it part-time. And nobody was going to be cooking the books because I was the one doing the books, and I wasn't going to be beholden to Wall Street and their valuation of the stock and the company in which I had my retirement in. So for all those reasons, that's when we began to double down, and then went full-time into self-storage or real estate investing at the time, getting into more single-family houses. We had about 75 of those, and then we had about 400 apartment units. And then finally, my wife said, hey, I'm really tired of working all these weekends doing all this catch up and turns and things, in addition to our staff and our contractors who didn't show up and everybody else, and said, we need to find a better way to do this, or else either I quit or you fire me, one of the two, essentially. And so we began to look into self-storage just to be able to leverage really our time. We just didn't have that freedom, the cash flow, that we wanted. And so we began looking across the real estate landscape, and there's either parking lots or self-storage if you want to be in rental real estate without all the hassles of tenants, toilets, and trash. And you just can't build that value into, say, like parking lots or parking garages like you can with self-storage facilities and all the additional income streams and rental rates and tenant insurance and things that you can add to grow the value of it. So the more I looked into the business, the more I liked what I saw, especially the fact that we don't fall under eviction laws like tenant real estate, habitational real estate. We don't have tenants. We have clients who store their stuff, and we fall under lien laws of warehousing. And so if somebody doesn't pay, you lock them out and you sell their stuff if they don't pay. So that part I really liked. And so I was the judge and jury, and, we get paid 100% of the time. If somebody, it moved out and didn't pay, or if we had to move them out by way of an auction, like many people have seen on TV. And then also, Michael, when, whether somebody left on their own or whether we had to go through an auction process, what I was left with was, an empty metal box on a concrete slab. So my turn, was 30 seconds and a blower to blow out the unit, maybe wipe down the door and spray a little lube on the spring, and that was it. Whereas with our houses and apartments, we had carpet to clean and replace, we had to paint, we had drywall, we had appliances, you name it. I mean, it was $1,300 to $1,500 per turn, and then we had to wait, 30, 45 days to do all that work before we could find another person to put in. Whereas with storage, 30 seconds, you blow it out and you move in the next person waiting in line, because we're marketing and advertising all the time. And so that was, I call it the light bulb moment. I mean, it was kind of a slow burn, and then all of a sudden immediately said, all right, this is, we're going to pivot. So after buying our first self-storage facility, then we began to sell off all the houses and apartments and began buying existing self-storage facilities. And then we branched out into converting industrial buildings and other types of properties, dark big boxes and old retail stores into self-storage, and then developing from the ground up. And essentially getting to the place where we are now, as you mentioned, over 4 million square feet and 25,000 units. We grew the syndication side of the private equity side of our business, and really is that is the business. We are more like a financial services company that deploys equity on behalf of our private equity partners in self-storage, which we feel is the best asset class. It's very recession resistant and inflation resistant, and so that either that's a long or short story, depending on how you and the listeners view it, is how we got to where we are today.
No, I mean, honestly, you told me beforehand that you had done this a couple times before, and I can tell because you answered a lot of the questions I had as we were going, which was nice. Less I have to do, the better, and the more the listeners learn. So, but what I am curious about is, so are you completely out of like the home buying market at this point, and it's just all in self-storage and then the syndicator portion of it?
Yeah, one residential home is the one that we live in. That's it.
Wow. So I take it that your wife probably enjoyed the switch and did not want to get
very
fired.
much so. It was really the second time when she brought it to my attention, and I was a little too stubborn and prideful to think that we were more sophisticated than to invest in those garages or those metal boxes. Only to find that what is truly sexy is cash flow without those hassles. And so, yeah, then we made the switch, and very thankful myself, and she is as well. It's provided an incredible, it is a lifestyle business, as much as people like to talk about all of them being that. I can tell you, single family houses, apartments, whether you're retailing, wholesaling, whether you are a landlord, that is not a mailbox business by any stretch. Don't let anybody tell you it is. But when you don't have people living in your space, and you don't have plumbing, and leaks and contractors that are constantly doing things you have to babysit, it also isn't a mailbox business. You need to walk the four corners of your business, but there's a whole lot less moving parts, which really just allowed us to focus on growing the business and working on the business rather than in it.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine that the number of weekends you've had to work since trading over has probably dipped dramatically.
It has. We bought a boat after that.
Wow. Okay. Any thoughts of renting out the boat for self-storage?
We haven't just yet, but it's a little too nice to let anybody else have. So we're going to hold off on that.
I think that's probably a good call. This is why I'm not in the business. But incredible. Especially, like, again, I'm going to be showing my age a little bit here. But like dating back to 2000 and seeing how that process started, it was very interesting to see, like, you're in tech. And then you kind of figure out, okay, this thing's working, and then, okay, let's go over there. And then as you find new problems, you find new solutions, it shows a great ability to, really be flexible and find what's working and not be afraid to switch things up. Are you able to use the things that, you gathered in your tech career or your career before this? Like, how are you able to use those qualities or that experience in what you're doing now?
Yeah, interesting, Michael. Going even further back, my degrees in marketing, and I guess just about every job that you're in, or basically in life, you're kind of selling something. You're marketing something, no matter what. Every day you're using marketing skills
Yeah.
to get to the next level in something in your life. And so, I find myself, even though I went to a very well-known, very well-renowned business school, there's really only two professors and two courses that I think that have really carried over, and one of them truly was my marketing class, and also my business attorney. Those two individuals were incredible. The stories they had and the things that they taught me are really, I can't say the only two things that carried over, but they did. And then you find yourself drawing on some of those experiences. And in terms of the tech sector, I think it's more of just being open to what's available out there and just the leverage you can get from using technology. We this is self-storage is a pretty static business, but our highest line items in terms of expenses are insurance, property taxes, and payroll. So tech doesn't really help us on property taxes. They are what they are. It doesn't do that much essentially from insurance either. But the payroll piece, we've been able to automate and add technology in places where when people are searching for storage, they search on their mobile phone. So we have a mobile-friendly website, and it's a website that is interactive, which means it integrates and alters to whether you're on a mobile phone or a tablet or a laptop or desktop. But it allows people to reserve a unit online or rent a unit online without ever having to come into our facility and meet with a live person sitting behind the counter. And in many instances, we've evolved to the place now where we've gone from people behind the counter twiddling their thumbs 40 hours a week, waiting for somebody to come in, to then putting in an $18,000 kiosk, which was like an ATM machine in the facility that walked through that whole process, to now we have unmanned facilities. And this is the kiosk, my friend. That is it. For those that are listening, I'm holding up my mobile phone, and you can rent a unit at any one of our self-storage facilities by utilizing your phone, entering all your information in, digital signatures, giving you an access code to get into the facility, and you bring your own lock, or in many instances, we have a key fob that is given to you, or a code at the site, depending upon the technology that we're utilizing and when that facility was built. So, everybody loves to bypass the line at Starbucks with the app or your favorite coffee place. And that's all we've done is, taking that technology, which everybody's so used to doing now. They don't have to come to a storage facility and talk about the school system and, look at their neighbors or anything else. It's a commodity, and they need to check something off their list that day, and that's to rent a storage unit for all their husband or spouse's junk to move in this weekend. And the easier that we make it, we'll win in the marketplace by reducing the amount of friction that people have to go through to rent a storage unit.
Yeah, I mean, that's something, we're talking about in the day-to-day at Camaplan, and I'm sure a lot of businesses are having those conversations everywhere, which is, how
Sure.
can I make this as easy as possible for the client, for the target audience to do
Yeah.
whatever it is you want them to do, whether it be sign up for a consultation or rent a storage unit. The more steps that you can just take away, and the more that
Yeah.
they can do
Tech and
sitting on their
automation.
couch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible how far we've come with technology. And I think, and I don't mean to, just praise you, but like, I think part of the reason this has probably been so successful for you is your willingness to change and willingness to grow, and not feeling like you have to have someone sitting in the office twiddling their thumbs for 40 hours a week, which I know that's not easy for everyone to admit.
Yeah, we're pretty early adopters. We're not always willing to be the pioneers. We like to see a proven concept, but then we'll be the first to adopt it as soon as we've seen that it is a proven concept and see some success, and then we move forward pretty quickly with that speed. I think in any business, speed is the name of the game. You just have to move quick, and especially when it comes to innovations.
I couldn't agree more. So could you tell me a little bit about selfstorageinvesting.com specifically? I've seen the mentoring, the coaching. What is that all about?
Yeah. So we never set out. I'm a self-storage investor, and I like to teach people stuff as well, and to give back. And so I used to run the Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. I was the president of that, and we had 600 investors here in Indianapolis, and we grew that organization. And being the front of it and the mouthpiece for a couple of years, people knew what I was doing in self-storage because we talked about it. So I started holding some workshops, and then the models of these investment groups is we have national speakers come through that teach on various investing aspects and different asset classes. And there are agents that represent those speakers that go out to the clubs. And one of those agents contacted me and said, "Hey, we don't have anybody teaching about self-storage, and the industry has been asking for someone to go out and do this. And so, if you don't mind, I want you to meet me in Florida. We'll go find a conference room in a hotel, and for a couple of days, we'll create a speech, a way for you to teach people. You can also give some resources and tools to them, and we'll put you on the road, and it may give you an opportunity to create a little additional income, and then maybe an opportunity to invest with some of these folks as well as you travel around." And I thought, well, that sounds great, because I used to write the checks for my group to those speakers when they'd come to our groups. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, okay, here's a little additional walking around money. Why not? And so we did, and it took off. And it's been an incredible run. I never set out to be any type of a guru, if you will, or mouthpiece for the industry, but indeed, God bless that. And that's what happened. I was speaking quite a bit. And then as a result of that, people wanted to have then, 1-day workshops and then 3-day boot camps. And we created a whole home study system, and then software to evaluate, basically just a modification, a cleaning up of the software that I use to evaluate self-storage facilities. And then just replicated and reproduced the system that we use to find, evaluate, purchase, and manage self-storage facilities. And so that was the home study system with that title to it, the self-storage investing home study system: how to find, evaluate, purchase, and manage self-storage. And so that has become kind of the gold standard for teaching people how to get into the business, along with our 3-day academies. And then along the way, we created a mastermind. And that was, to be honest with you, Michael, that was really more for myself. I mean, as entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, we would love to have water cooler talk, or somebody down the hall that you can chat with and bounce ideas off of with regards to marketing and best business practices in accounting and management. And if you don't have that, it's great to build a group of people around you that can be that. And so I did. I built a mastermind really for myself, but then also monetize that as well. And people pay a fee to come, and we use that money to have some great experiences and invest back into them and their businesses, and also in our mission efforts. And so we have the oldest, the largest, and most active, and I would say the best mastermind in self-storage on the planet.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is this wouldn't necessarily work in every industry, but having an industry like this where it is kind of wide open enough, you can form these relationships where you're all helping each other. It doesn't have to be competition 24/7 like we see in some industries.
Right.
So again, it's just the ability to find that niche of something that's missing. And shout out to the guy who wanted to meet you in Florida and go over the course. But it seems as though you've really taken that under, I'm losing the word that I'm looking for, but you really took it and ran with it. Which is incredible.
Yeah, I think it was more of it has been it was a calling along the way when I was contemplating this. I did a lot of work. Well, we almost went bankrupt in the single family business, and right up to the brink, and then began looking at Crown Financial Ministries and Dave Ramsey's programs on how to just manage our personal finances better. And then along with that was the business side as well. And after working with teaching Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey's organization, I had an opportunity to meet with him at one of his live events. And backstage, we were helping. I was assisting, and Dave's just sitting by himself on a crate, a moving crate in the back. And I was just like, Dave Ramsey's sitting by himself, not talking to anyone. So I went over and struck up a conversation. And his story, for those that are familiar, was basically the same as my story, and except he did go bankrupt, and he watched his Jaguar get loaded up on a flatbed trailer and sold off, and lost his house, and almost lost his marriage. Well, our marriage got stronger. We kept the house, but I did have to sell my 1969 Corvette that I was restoring, and watched it get loaded up on a flatbed trailer and hauled away. And then I told him how I turned it around using a lot of the principles he taught and from the Bible, and then implementing that in my business like he did. He said, you need to go out and teach people about this then, is what you need to do. He said, because I have a number of people that come onto my podcast and my radio show that have the same story that you and I have in real estate. He said, but, in self-storage, he said, I think you've got a mission field here in front of you. And so that was the same time when I was approached by that agent. And so we answered the call on the education side of the business, nowhere near as lucrative as investing by any stretch, but it's been a calling to make sure that people don't end up in the place that we did. And, as the tide rises, it takes all ships with it. And so it just really, I felt it would make it easier for all of us in self-storage to do business better if everybody is more educated, instead of shooting out, crazy offers and driving prices up, and just working more cohesively within the industry instead of competitively. So that's what we've strived for.
And it seems like it's worked.
So far, so good.
So So you spoke about how you almost went bankrupt. You had to sell the Corvette. Did I
Mm.
get that right? I'm not a car person.
Yep, you
Okay.
got it.
Very quickly, I was like, I think
Mhm.
I know, but I already forget. But I like to ask my guests about mistakes that they've made because I'm a
Mhm.
big believer in learning more from mistakes than
Yeah.
you do from success a lot of the time, whether
Mhm.
that be from other people's mistakes, like you did with Dave Ramsey,
Mhm.
or your own mistakes. And I just think,
Mhm.
being able to actually go through the triumph of succeeding
Mhm.
after failure is worth a
Yeah.
lot more. So, could you tell
Mhm.
me about a time in this journey that maybe you didn't think you'd be getting out of it, or a mistake that you made that,
Mm. Yeah.
was costly?
Sure. Yeah, I think the best gift we can give ourselves is self-awareness and understanding our shortcomings and not being prideful. And I'd have to say, if I look back and point to the mistakes I've made, most of them were done out of pride. And so I set a goal because I was going to get in, have X number of apartment units by the end of this year. And if I was getting close, but not quite there, and it's October and I got one more deal that I need to get under my belt to meet the goal that I put out there to my wife and my friends and whoever else, then, I'd start going back through the garbage can and pulling out the deals that didn't look so good before and now made them look good and, shined them up so I could meet my goal. And when I'm thinking I'll make it up on the next one, and I've heard many people come through our organization on the education side say, well, I just want to get one under my belt and we'll make it up on the next one. And I think that is wrong. When you let the excitement of doing a deal, getting into the business or doing more deals and then amassing a certain number of units or facilities or buildings or whatever you're investing in, that it trumps the viability of that underlying investment, that's a big mistake. I've made that and many other people do as well. So due diligence is done for a reason and your underwriting is done for a reason and analysis. You put your parameters in place, you put your stop gaps and you put your, this is the price that I will not exceed and you stick to it. But I think, again, emotion and pride gets in the way of that. And so, yeah, I bought an apartment building that I shouldn't have bought because I wanted to reach a goal and I thought I could make it work and I could regentrify this neighborhood with this one apartment building. And I was very optimistic in my own abilities, and the market taught me a lesson. And so that was very early on in my career. But also, more recently, within the past few years, we had a project that was similar to storage, but it was just outside of self storage. And it was one that my private equity investors, my partners, were like, well, you've never done one of these before. And we're not so sure. We're not really familiar with this side of storage. And so it took a lot longer to raise the funds for. We had fewer banks that were interested in taking a risk on that little niche within a niche asset class, and also the fact that I didn't have any experience in it either. And so delay after delay after delay in getting on the funding and working through the project and having to redo the development cost, all delays. And so I said speed is the name of the game. All these delays just added to the cost of the project and then
Yeah.
set it up not necessarily for failure. It did succeed eventually, but not under our ownership, and we had to sell out prior to us taking it forward. So we took it to a level and sold it for somebody else to pick up the ball and run with it after that. So I think maybe getting over, I hate to even say getting over my skis on a project, but maybe just deviating too far away from my niche and my specialty, and thinking that I can do this very successfully, just like everything else. So those are two instances in which perhaps just a little exuberance, maybe a little pride got in the way of the viability of actually getting these things across the finish line.
And that's funny. From my, understanding, it almost seems as if they're two extremely different scenarios as well. Because in the first one, you're kind of just going against your own knowledge, your own logic.
Right.
You're like, hey, I
Hmm.
threw this out,
Hmm.
but maybe quantity over quality.
Correct. Hmm.
But you were correct in the first, you were right.
Hmm.
And you're
Hmm.
really just at the end of it, you're just going, wow, I told you so, as you're looking
Yeah.
yourself in the
Right.
mirror.
Yeah.
Whereas with the second one, obviously, not to say it was out of your control, but it might have been something you were passionate about, something you like.
Hmm.
And you had other people kind of telling you, hey, maybe not. And you've got,
Hmm.
the signs from the banks and the long
Hmm.
process. So that's interesting. I think both of those situations can tell you something differently,
Yep.
tell you something different, and I'm sure that you learned something different from each of them.
Absolutely. And that's a very good perspective. You're right. Yeah, we learned something from both of them now. And again, I've been at this for quite a while. I've been investing in real estate for 30 years. And, just as recently as, 2 or 3 years ago to learn one of those lessons. because I got excited. You're right. I wanted to do something a little different and felt that we could do it. And I was being challenged instead of just doing the cookie cutter type stuff that we've been doing all the time. But then again, recognize that, okay, now I know how the lenders are going to react, and my private equity group is going to react, my list, my tribe. If we bring something that is a little outside of the norm, a confused mind says no. When somebody says, hey, wait a minute, we're used to seeing these projects that all almost look the same with the same types of returns, and now you're bringing us this, and speed or lack thereof is can be a deal killer. And so once again, more self-awareness. So that's what we've learned.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-awareness is something that everyone could use more of.
100%.
So lastly, I have one question that I always say for the end, but I did want to talk about your mission work. I have going to your website and kind of reading a little bit about it. I will not do it justice. So I would love for you to tell me more about the stuff that you and your company do, and how that happened, how you got into that, and why you do it.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, as I was listening to and learning as much as I could about how to turn our personal finances around, we basically tied ourselves out of debt. And so that became a lifelong journey of then taking that into the corporate side. We were asked to go on a mission trip that was paid for by a very wealthy individual that I'm friends with here in Indianapolis. And he took our whole family and several others at our private school where our kids all went to on a mission trip to the Dominican Republic, and they partnered with YWAM, Youth with a Mission, to build houses through their Homes of Hope division. And so we got to go. All we had to pay for was the plane tickets. He paid for the house. He paid for the entire trip. And we built a house in 2 days and handed the keys over to a deserving family who had been well vetted, who had a hardship, as many people do in the Dominican Republic. And we saw the impact of what that looks like to have an open hand. And as money comes into your business, when it flows out through you to help other people in the world that are in a different position just by way of the nature and the fact that they were born somewhere else other than here in the United States. And that set us off on a journey. And I told my wife, I said, I'm going to do that. So we're going to begin tithing corporately on our corporate profits. So 10% off the top of our corporate profits, we're going to put into a fund, and we're going to do the same thing. And so we started collecting those funds. And go figure, our business took off. And at that point, then we were able to take a group of our friends, family, coworkers on our first mission trip to build a house, and we paid for the whole thing to open up their eyes to what it's like to go on a short-term, family-friendly mission trip, to give back. And to date, we built 26 houses now. We're doing 2 trips a year, building 3 to 4 houses each time. And Michael, the cool part is not only, we're ending generational poverty one family at a time when we give these houses away, and everything that goes into that, the health of living in a house that has a concrete floor instead of dirt, with all the disease and everything that happens as a result of that. And people can't work or go to school, and just, the cycle of poverty that comes with not having a home. But that is, that's been a beautiful thing to be a part of. But what I never anticipated or expected is just the ripple effect. I was affected by that trip that somebody paid for me to go on and to have that experience. And everybody has a different experience. But now that we've taken, a team of 20 to 25 people per house times 26 houses, now the ripple effect of those folks are doing the same thing in their businesses and in their lives. They're doing something in their community. They're doing something in their household that is mission-minded. But many of those folks are coming alongside of us, and they're building houses through the same organization. And now we're able to multiply that. They're starting missions of their own and giving back in different ways and forms. And so where people either, weren't understanding what it looks like to just kind of give back and understand what it's like to be in this world where we need to help each other, but in ways that they never thought before, and stretching themselves, and then understanding that, hey, the purpose of my business exists that I can provide for myself, my family, the folks that work for me, but also for the greater good in the world, and to be able to spread that. And so that's been the really cool part to see, is a ripple effect. Just because we said yes once, we'll go on this mission trip, use us, and here we are today. So just being a vessel for that has been awesome, and I love every time we get ready to go on one of those trips. I am not built to be lifting shingles up a ladder, or even hammering or doing anything like that, but is the best hot, thirsty, tired, dry, sore work you will ever do in your life. And I can't wait every time we step onto the jet bridge to head off somewhere.
I can't even imagine how amazing that feels. It's incredible.
It's awesome.
I didn't, like I said, I would not have done that justice. I didn't know the depths of it. That is incredible. Did it require a lot of, maybe convincing is the wrong word, but How open to it were you that first time where your wealthy friend asked you?
That's a very good question. We always can make excuses about the time, and we've been talking with our kids about going on a mission trip, and they're the ones who came home with us and said, "Hey, so and so's dad is willing to pay for a trip. Can we go?" And my wife and I looked at each other like, "This is a horrible time to go. We don't have the time to do this." And this was a time when we were financially struggling. Go figure. And we didn't think that we could afford the plane tickets, and we didn't want to say no to them. So my wife, and interesting, Michael, nobody prompted you to ask this, but my wife looked into with my office to see if we had enough frequent flyer miles, to be able to pay for these plane tickets, because we couldn't afford it. And she got with my assistant and got into the multiple airlines and looked at the mileage, and literally to the dollar, to the mile, was enough to buy 5 plane tickets to get to the Dominican Republic. So truly, it was ordained, and there was a reason that we were supposed to go on that trip, and he provided and continues to do so.
Wow. I'm even more glad I asked now. That's incredible.
Me too. Something that we don't normally just share openly on a podcast, but it's been an incredible journey, and this is something that we were meant to do. This is our purpose.
That's incredible. I could keep asking you about that all day, but
I can talk about it all day.
Finally, before I let you plug yourself, tell the listeners where they can find you, all that kind of stuff. I would just like to ask, what does financial freedom mean to you?
Oh gosh, the easy answer is always, you can do what you want when you want. I think it is that place, for us, it's that and more, just because of the conversation we just had. And that is, I want to be in the place to be able to give whatever we want, so when people are in need, we have been blessed. We have the ability to write checks to people and organizations, and I think on a greater scale to move the needle a little bit more. We are moving into that phase now of significance and impact and legacy, and so to make a greater impact. And so I can't say I can quantify it, but I think when you're not worried about the day-to-day, that is financial freedom, when your passive income surpasses your active income and allows you to live the lifestyle you want, to be able to step away if you want, or to be able to truly step away, and your living needs are met, by the income that is coming in passively, without you having to actively manage it or actively trade hours for dollars anymore, if you will. But for me, it's just another level, which is, I want to be able to give whatever I want, whenever I want.
I love that. And you're right. I think there is always kind of that easy answer, but why I keep asking it is because no one keeps just giving the easy answer.
Right.
I love hearing more about it. Exactly. So Scott, please tell the listeners where they can find you. And again, all of that information will be in the description as well, but please tell them.
Yeah. So selfstorageinvesting.com, as you mentioned, Michael, that is a place where, anybody and everybody can learn about everything that we do and what we have to offer. So we teach people about the business. We invest in the business ourselves. We invest with private equity partners that come alongside of us. And we have our mastermind. And so all things self-storage is at selfstorageinvesting.com. Lots of free information, resources, white papers. So if you're just curious on how to invest actively or passively in self-storage, then that is the place to go. And then if you just search Scott Meyers, Meyers, self-storage on any of the socials, you'll find us. We're everywhere: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you name it.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you so much for coming on today. I had a wonderful time talking to you. I loved hearing about your journey and, everything from 2000 to going to the Dominican Republic and giving back. I had a really great time, and I hope we can talk again soon.
My pleasure, Michael. Thanks so much. I look forward to it.
And as always, thank you for listening to The Road to Financial Freedom. If you enjoyed this show, please support the podcast by remembering to rate, review, and subscribe. You can keep up to date with us on Facebook or Instagram at Road to Financial Freedom Podcast. Thanks again, and I will see you all next time. If you like what you're hearing on The Road to Financial Freedom and want to learn more about self-directed IRAs and 401ks, click the link in the description to download a free toolkit with everything you need to get started.